Look what's back in the shop. This is my 1989 Porsche 911 Carrera Cabriolet. This is a G50 transmission. And it's back today for something pretty simple. The passenger mirror has its powered mirrors. The passenger side quit working. The driver's side's still working fine. So I'm gonna try to show you guys the diagnostics on how to troubleshoot that and hopefully get it working today. I have a few spare parts, but I hope it's the right ones. I'm gonna put the top down real quick just so there's a little bit more light inside, and I'll show you guys the power controls for the mirrors. One of the nice things about this car is it has a manual top. So this year came with an electric one, but by now those are typically not working and hard to fix. So this is pretty simple. In order to work the mirrors, the ignition key needs to be on. And this is a little joystick here that is what controls the position of the mirrors. So if I, go down, you can see the mirror moving. Down, up, that's right. And then there's left. So the joystick seems to be working right. And then to change the passenger mirror, there's a little switch here on the dash. And you can see that it's just above the key. That is for the passenger side. So when I do the same thing, same joystick controls on the passenger side, basically get no movement at all. I don't think it's a fuse because the driver's side and passenger side operate off the same fuse. I know that from the wiring diagram. It's fuse number 5. So the fact that this left one works means the fuse is good. It's probably something related. I mean, if you look at the diagram, the power comes in, it goes to this switch first. So perhaps the switch is bad, but it's unlikely because each of the positions works left, right, up, down. It could be the switch that switches it from left to right, but that's not a switch that gets used very often. It doesn't look like it's really susceptible to the elements. So it's also could be that the wiring between this switch and the driver's side, or sorry, the passenger side, something could be suspect in the wiring. Maybe the wiring got pinched because the doors are constantly moving. So I'm going to be looking at all that, guys, and hopefully we'll troubleshoot it. One thing I have read is that oftentimes the connector gets loose on the bottom of this joystick. So I'm going to try to pull that out and then see if we can look at the connections there and then just trace it on down the system. So the back of this connector doesn't look that great to me because I can see bare wires. This is the brown, which is typically ground, but this black wire is either the input power or the switched wire. I can't remember, but it looks like perhaps either someone's been here before or these wires have been pulled and the pins aren't in the right place. So you kind of see the pins from this view. It could just be a loose connection on this. So I'm going to go through and, double check these connections and make sure these pins are clean and that these wires are attached. It looks like this is about to just come right off. So a little dielectric grease. I'm just going to put that on the connector, plug it back in and do some probing on the electrical contacts. I don't have nice probes to check the back of these wires, but I have MIG welding wire, so I just shrunk that on there. So now I can probe the back of the wires as I use the switch and see why power is not going to the far side. 12.3. So the switch is working, the connector is okay. It's likely the problem is on this side of the car. It's either in the door panel, in the mirror itself, or maybe the wiring going up to it. So the easiest thing to do is pop the trunk and look for some loose wiring in the trunk area. You guys, I think I might have found the problem because I've taken the carpet back and there are some connectors back here. This one looks like it's for this light right here. This one, not sure where it goes. This is a connector right here. This is a 2-pin connector. It does not go to anything, so that could be the problem. Or it could be this big round connector, which I'm trying to show you. This round connector is not connected to anything either. And this looks like the mate to it right here. So I think if we just plug these together, we might very well get it to work again. I'd like to know where this one goes too. I'll look at some more diagrams, but I think we might have found the problem. We'll try now that it's connected. We got the switch over here. Switch is on passenger. So I'm gonna give this some movement. I don't hear it moving. No, it's still not working. So that makes me wonder why somebody disconnected that. I didn't get any power on the passenger side connector. Even when the switch was moved in different positions, seems like there's no power on that side. So now I'm getting a little worried about maybe it's the rocker switch under the dash, that maybe that's part of the problem. So I'm gonna try to get that switch out and troubleshoot the connections on the back and see if potentially that's the problem, or at least test the switch individually, because a little bit confused now. I thought that loose connector would have fixed it, but something else is wrong. I tried my pry tool here on that switch and it's just really tight. I couldn't get it off. So what I did is I went behind the dashboard and I loosened this gauge. So I'm gonna pull that gauge out of the way and hopefully push it down from inside without breaking it off. I got that switch out of there. It was a little hard to film, but basically I had to use the mirror to look down inside there. And there's these two little tabs here. You have to compress the tabs and then the switch comes off this way. Also, the connector comes off the back with those little retainer clips. So it's not impossible to get that out, but it does require removing the gauge. I don't think I could have pulled it out this way without breaking anything. The bezel's still intact, so everything's still in good shape. But now I'm going to, actually there's a diagram on the back of the switch and in the workshop manual. So I'm going to, put the meter on this and just see that it's working correctly. It seems like it should be working fine. I don't see any, missing connectors or the pins. This all looks good to me. So this is probably not the problem, but perhaps I can probe inside here and just see that the power is at least present here. That goes to the other side of the car. That's what I'm after. I can't get from, that switch over to this side without losing power. Nice thing about this is the diagram's labeled and the back of the switch is labeled. So this is pin 1. So if I go to pin 1, the switch makes contact with either 3 or 4, depending on which position the switch is in. So this is 3 and this is 4. So that's a beep, which means it's connected. So if I switch the position of the rocker, now it beeps on this side, not this side. So I'll do that again. This side works. This side works. And then pin 2 is here on the top and it works the same way. It just alternates contact between these two for left, right. So that's off now. That's on. Electrically, this switch is working just like the diagram. So it's good to kind of check these things. This is not the problem. Impossible to connect this thing backwards. It only goes in the harness one way. I'm not sure how easy that's going to be for you guys to see, but I've taken the back of the connector, just peeled it up a little bit. You're looking through the mirror there. So I'm able to use the probe on the back of those pins, and I am getting power on, so these are the 2 pins, horizontal and vertical. So I get power on those when you actuate the switch on the door, but now I'm getting power on these 2 sides, and that is what directs power over to the other side. With the connector disconnected, I am getting power on all the pins. One of them's a ground, and then it's, you know, up, down, left, right. The pins are alternating on their voltages. And I did try to measure some motor resistance or winding resistance on that side of the connector. See how it's got the male pins on that side? And I didn't see anything on resistance between ground and any of the pins. So that tells me that the other side of that connector might be disconnected inside the door. I'm switching back and forth between the factory manual and the Bentley manual, but there's T26, which I just showed you in the trunk area, and then T27, I believe, is inside the door. These are the motors. I thought I could determine if this connector was undone just by taking the mirror off, but what I found is just a bunch of tape and some splices and some bad repairs here. So I'm going to be probably taking the whole door panel off just to get to the back of the connector so I can take this thing onto the bench and figure out what the heck happened to these wires and why that's so beat up like that. Door panel's off. Someone's definitely been in here before. There are lots of connectors, and there's actually an extra hole drilled right there. But there's, you know, it's hard. I can't really show you until we get this further out, but behind there are some blue connectors. And I think the actual factory connector is in the mirror housing. So I'm going to continue to take this apart, try to get to the bottom of why it's not working, and even test the motors in the mirror. Okay, there's a locking tab to release this guy. Let's see if I can do it. Looking at the front of the mirror, it should go all the way counterclockwise. There we go. Just kind of had to push it a little bit. This is a heated mirror, so that's what these connections are for. I don't think the direction of these connectors matter. Some green corrosion there on those connectors. So let's put this away so we don't break it, and then I think we can disconnect it from the other side. So inside here are some hex bolts. I think it's an 8mm socket. So let's just, pull this off. Now I think we can separate this motor assembly from the back if it wants to. Should come apart. There we go. And then this has this, if I take this off, this has been helpful to protect it against the paint, but okay, there we go. So that's the motor assembly, and then behind here is that connector I was talking about in the diagram. I think this is connector T26 or something. So let's disconnect this. Get the towel here. So now we can do some tests on just the motors. I think they look okay, but we can make sure the motors at least work. Just below me, I got a big battery, and I'm just connecting this mirror directly to 12 volts. See if we get any movement. Okay, there's a little bit on this one. I don't know if you can hear that moving. Okay, that's maxed. So I can reverse the polarity on that one. And then let's try the two whites. White, brown. I'm going to switch the polarity, make it go the other way. Yep, so that's up, down. So we got them, both motors are working now. I got this one at the end of travel, so it's kind of binding up a little bit. So let me kind of center these. This is kind of the problem I'm dealing with. These connectors are not that great. The crimps are not that great. This one's already come undone. I just tugged it a little bit. See how the wires, there's only like 2 or 3 strands left. That used to be right there. This one's got crimps you know, every like 6 inches. So probably I'm just going to troubleshoot the wires. Like I know these 2 white wires are what make the mirror move, and at least in one direction, and then these 2 black wires make it move in the other direction. So I'm just gonna replace all the bad connections on at least 2 pairs and see if we can get it to run. I've just removed all the previous bad splices, and I haven't heat shrunk these yet because I just want to make sure the polarity and all the wiring's correct. I have matched the colors from, you know, this side to what's down inside the door. And so I think it's correct. So I'm going to try it with the key on, make sure the mirror's working, and then we'll come back and shrink this up and hopefully put it all back together for the final time. Really don't like those insulated crimps because they're just not reliable. This is a much more reliable way to do it, for sure. Is passenger side. So I'm just gonna hit that, and yes, I hear it moving. So let me show you. Here's the mirror right here. You see it moving? Awesome. I've talked about the importance of these crimpers before, but these are the open barrel crimpers, ratcheting style. I'll put a link in the description below for these crimpers and the open barrel crimps. But this is the industry standard way to do this for automotive. Don't put those insulated crimps on any car, unless it's one of these. You know, that's why these are blue and pink, right? Because they're for toys. All joking aside, you do whatever you want to do, but the other tip I have for you is that you don't want to twist the wires prior to crimping them. It's better if the wires are sort of parallel, because the open barrel crimp pushes them down inside each other, and you don't want to have braided, you know, twisted wire, because then it prevents the barrel from closing all the way down. So just resist that urge of twisting them. Use the heat shrink with the adhesive inside, because that creates a hermetic seal. It's as good as the original wire insulation, because it bonds to the original insulation and it gets all the moisture from going in. So that is the automotive way to repair wire, guys. The other option is solder, but on something like this, like a door that gets a lot of vibration, opening and closing, I don't recommend solder because it makes the copper really brittle because of the heat, and the solder can break. So this, I 100% think you should have this tool. This is the proper way to repair stuff, unless you want to work on your kids' toys. All right, I think we're done here. Everything moves as it should in the right direction. Goes down, goes up, right, everything. And now flip the switch, and this side works great too. Awesome. There's even a little rubber plug that you can push in the socket there, so that's kind of cool. And then these are breakaway mirrors, so they just lock right in. So that's it. You really don't need these disconnectable things. See? Instead of disconnecting the connector, it just pulls the wire out of the crimp. The correct thing to do, and the way that I repaired it, is you would have to, you know, take off the mirror, disconnect the wiring, and then push the pins out. It's actually way easier than taking the whole door panel off. So you get the extractor tool, you label the housing, and then you push the pins out, You take the mirror off, and then you do whatever you need to do, replace the mirror, replace the gasket, whatever it is. And then you just push the pins back in. That's not that hard. And it's, I think, like I said, way easier than adding the door connectors. You don't want to add too many connectors just because that's where corrosion and resistance starts taking over.